Did you
So
also
far,
start? Yeah. Okay.
I did, but okay.
Yeah, it's coming through, definitely.
Okay, cool.
Okay, so we're live. Welcome to this OWASP Belgium virtual chapter meeting edition of April 21. This month we have the honor to have with us Simon Bennetts, who is a long-time contributor to OWASP. Obviously known for the ZAP project, and Simon is going to explain what it is about. Simon started working on ZAP over 10 years ago, in 2009, and has really been also an example for other projects in not only creating a really useful tool for the community, but also creating a very active community of contributors and users for the tool itself. So with that, it's a great tool and a great example for other OWASP projects. Before I would say giving you the word, I would just wanted a little bit to give a pitch for anyone who starts viewing this from the beginning. We do have monthly OWASP Belgium virtual chapter meetings each third Thursday of the month, so you can already set and fill in and block your agendas for that. Next month we'll have Jeremiah Grossman, afterwards Mark Curvey, Andrew van der Stok in September, and Steve Springett in October. So we'll have a very nice lineup of other talks. But before that, we'll start with Simon. Obviously, I'll stop sharing. I'll give the word to Simon for you to start with your presentation on ZAP. Simon, thank you very much for joining us, and here you go.
Thank you very much, Seba. Just to let you know, I mean, I think these kind of sessions should be very informal. So if you've got questions, then please ask them either in this Zoom call or on YouTube. I think someone's going to keep an eye on that. So if things aren't clear, let me know if you've got questions. I'll stop at a couple of points to ask if anyone's got any questions. But, you know, and we can go off on tangents if you like. So I will now share my screen and start presenting. So hopefully you can see that slide now. Okay, so as Seba said, I'm Simon Bennetts. I'm the ZAP founder and one of the project leads, and I'm a distinguished engineer at Stackhawk now, where we're building a commercial solution on top of ZAP. So today what I'm going to do, I'm going to talk about three things. I'm going to give an introduction to ZAP for people who don't know much about it. Then I'm going to talk about two of the kind of newest features we're working on, which are the automation framework and the reporting add-on. Now, I talked about both of these at the recent ZapCon, but don't worry if you saw that, because I'll be showing some of the newest stuff that we've done since then, so even newer things. Okay, so I'm going to start off with what is ZAP. It always seems to be a good place to start. And it is a tool for finding vulnerabilities in web applications. And I think it's worth pointing out that if you've come from the network security world, you might think of scanners kind of looking for known vulnerabilities and known applications, looking for CVEs. And that isn't how a tool like ZAP works, really. I mean, we do spot some known things in known applications, but really we're looking at essentially unknown vulnerabilities in unknown applications. So these are applications which custom applications which typically pen testers haven't seen before. So we're looking for things like cross-site scripting, SQL injection, all those kind of things. And the way ZAP works, it attacks these applications in a similar way to a pen tester or a malicious attacker. It is an OWASP flagship project, and as this is an OWASP call, you probably all know that the flagship projects, the kind of most mature ones, are the ones that are recommended for people to get started with. Like all OWASP projects, it is completely free and open source, and it is cross-platform. I must admit, I'm always a bit, I never really understand the whole idea of having platform-specific tools. And it's well maintained, and I think this is quite key. There are very few web security tools that have been maintained over a length of time. Lots get started, but they don't get maintained for very long. And final thing I want to point out, it is the world's most widely used web scanner. Most widely used DAST, Dynamic Application Security Testing tool. Now, that's a bit of a claim. So on what basis do we claim that? So we have various stats. We get about 500,000 start pings every month. And in February, we actually got 6 million Docker pulls. And we know it is used by large enterprises and individuals all around the world, and it's a foundation for quite a few commercial tools. We've actually gone public with this claim some time ago, and you can be sure that I made sure that our commercial and open source competitors were aware of it, and none of them had contested it. So on that basis, I'm sure it must be true. So who is ZAP for? I mean, when I first released ZAP in 2010, it was very much aimed at developers and functional testers. And I think this is important because I think it's, if you start testing an application too late, then it gets very expensive and time consuming to fix the problems. So I really strongly believe that we actually need to get developers and functional testers doing security testing. It is also really good for students. It's a great way to learn, particularly because it's open source, and you can actually, anyone can go and see how it works and contribute to it, of course. But it's also for security professionals. We know lots of security professionals use ZAP, although I kind of say that for developers and functional testers, ZAP could well be the only web security tool you need, whereas security professionals, we would really expect them to use a wide range of security tools and be aware of the strengths and weaknesses of all of them. So there are different ways you can actually use ZAP. One of them is, the way a lot of people use it, is the desktop graphical user interface. That requires Java. So ZAP is a Java app. As long as you've got a JVM on a system, ZAP should run. We also have a heads-up display, and this will work with the GUI or with the daemon mode, which I'll talk about in a bit. And the heads-up display actually brings ZAP into the browser, so it allows you to see what's going on in your application while you're focusing on the application and control ZAP in the background. But it's really heavily used for automation, we know that, and ZAP will run in daemon mode and can be controlled via the API. So ZAP is released, we try and average about 2 releases a year, but ZAP has a plugin architecture, and so we release add-ons as and when required, and those add-ons can actually add very significant functionality to ZAP, and things like the automation framework and the reporting add-on, which I'll talk about later. Both of those have been released as add-ons, so they work on top of ZAP 2.10, which was released late last year. But we also do weekly releases. So every Monday there is a new weekly release, both zip and Docker image, and we should have a live Docker image. So if we make any changes to ZAP, then a new live Docker image will get built. We've actually had, on occasion, people come onto the IRC channel, tell us of a problem, we've looked into it, fixed it, and then be able to tell them, okay, it's now fixed, can you test it out in the live image? I can't promise that every time, but yeah, that has happened a few times. So that was my kind of quick introduction to ZAP. Any questions so far?
None received so far, but if you're following this live in the Zoom session, please feel free to use the Q&A or the chat. And if you're following this on YouTube, at least live, you'll be post your question. I'll make sure that we can forward that in the session here to Simon. If you're looking at this afterwards, you were too late. Simon, here you go.
Great. So what I'm do now is talk about ZAP Automation, which is definitely one of ZAP's strengths. We've, I think I introduced the API into ZAP in 2011. It's one of the first changes, and ZAP, automation is definitely one of the ZAP strengths. It's used heavily in automation, and we try and make sure that ZAP is as easy to control as possible. You do have various options. We do have a command line scan option, so you can run just pass parameters on the command line. That works, but it's quite limited. We have what we call the package scans. So we have a set of ZAP Docker images, and then we have package scans. And these allow you to, we've got a baseline scan, we've got a full scan, we've got an API scan. So they just kind of run ZAP in a standard way. They've got lots of parameters, and we know these package scans are used quite heavily. But these package scans are tied to Docker, so they will only run in Docker. They don't have to, but that's just the way they've been developed. So we also have two GitHub actions. They are, so there's the baseline scan and the package and the full scan. We don't have the API scan in there. And we've got the daemon API mode. So the daemon mode, you just run ZAP as normal with -daemon, and then you can control it via the API. And ZAP has a very powerful API. Now, the package scans actually use ZAP in daemon mode, and the GitHub actions use package scans. So it's all a kind of, those are all very similar. But we now have a new automation framework that I introduced in the at ZapCon. So I'll tell you a bit more about that. So the automation framework is a bit different from the package scans. Within the package scans, we have a set of Python scripts which control ZAP via the API. In this case, we're actually running everything within ZAP, so we're not controlling ZAP via the API. We won't get rid of the API, don't worry. We know a lot of people use it directly, but instead of having a separate script, everything runs within ZAP. And this means there's no requirement for the containers. It will work just as well when you're running ZAP from the command line, or whether you're running in Docker or any other container you care to choose. It is very extensible. There's one thing we found with the package scans. It was actually quite difficult to extend them, and it was getting quite painful to do so because everything was or most things are on the command line. Whereas what we have here with Automation Framework, the plan is for there to be one configuration, and that's a YAML file. And at the moment, there is no GUI element. Now, I can definitely see us adding one in the not too distant future, particularly so that you can actually get things working how you want them in the GUI, and then actually exporting that into the YAML file. But at the moment, there isn't one. But we expect this to be the most common way people will automate ZAP. And as part of that, things like the package scans, we will be changing them to use this automation framework in time. So as there's no GUI, we have just got command line options. So there are 4 options at the moment. There's auto run, and this runs everything begins with auto for automation, and you can call auto run with the YAML file, and that will run the automation jobs that are specified in the file. So the file contains a list of jobs, and they map to ZAP features like the spider and the active scanner. Then we've got 3 commands which allow you to actually generate these configuration files. We have the autogen_min, which generates the file with what we think of like the key parameters that you're most likely to want to use. Then autogen_max with we've got all of the parameters that are available, and then autogen_conf, where it'll generate the file using the current set of configuration. So if you get ZAP set up how you want, then you can run that. So here is an example of a very minimal YAML file. You'll see we've got environment, we've got one context called example, and that points to, and that's got the example.com URL. And then we've got 3 jobs, and that's the spider. We've then got a passive scan wait job, so we're waiting for the passive scan to complete, and then a report. So what I'll do now is do some demos. So hopefully So I've got a directory here, and I hope you can see that okay. So I have a set of commands, and what I'm going to do first, I'll just show what it looks like. So to generate the kind of minimum YAML file, because I'm on a Mac, I've got applications, or ZAP app context Java zap.sh. There's the autogen min, and here's the file. That's my current working directory, and that's what I want to put it in. And I'll just kick that off. It'll take a few seconds to run, about 30, I think. For some reason, ZAP takes a little bit longer on Mac systems. And I've got a minus command option as well. So we've got various different options in ZAP, but if you don't specify anything, you'll get the desktop. If you specify minus daemon, then you'll get the, then ZAP will run daemon mode. And minus command means ZAP will do whatever you tell it to in the remaining parameters, and then we'll exit. So you'll see now we've actually written to that file. And if I cat, there we see, actually, I'll vi it just to make it a bit easier to move around. So you'll see we have a link to the TBA and docs. I need to fix that because we do have some docs now. It's amazing what you see when you're actually running demos. So we've now got, so it generates a context. This is the mandatory URL. You can have include and exclude paths. We don't support authentication yet, but we definitely plan that to come. Then we've got some options for whether you're failing on an error or just warning on error, and you can actually put the progress to standard out. Then you can actually define, so here are the jobs defined. We've got one for add-on management, so you can actually, by default, we want to update an existing add-ons, and you can install and uninstall add-ons if you like. We then we can configure the passive scanner. So here we've got maximum alerts per rule for 10, which is usually fine for automation, and scanning only in scope. We kind of recommend that, particularly as if you notice these, because you have to define a context, you will always have something in scope. So by default, that's not set by usually for ZAP because we can't guarantee people will be using context, but here we know there will be. And we've got a kind of max body size to scan in bytes to scan. Then we've got so I've got the GraphQL add-on installed, so we can import something. If we don't actually have an endpoint, it won't do anything. Again, Open API, you've got an Open API endpoint, or we got files and a URI or a target URL. Don't have any of those, so nothing will happen there. And SOAP, again, we can import SOAP definitions. Then we have the traditional spider, and we've got some various parameters there, including max depth and max children, the Ajax spider, and all of these kind of parameters are available in ZAP as well, the ZAP options. And go down, we've got the active scanner. So you'll see, and then we've got reporting. So see, these are all the add-ons I've got which support the automation framework, and that's kind of a minimum set. So if we have a look here and have a look at and I'll kick that off while I'm talking about it. So we can actually generate a file with the maximum amount of parameters. And again, it's very, the same thing. I just had to say where ZAP was. I've got the minus autogen max. This is the current directory, and I've given a different file and given it the command option as well. So to give you an idea of the kind of things that we will that will be available for everything. And that's now written to. So if I have a look at Max, we will see actually the context stuff, the environment is very similar, and the add-ons as well. But then when you get to things like, so the passive scan configuration, we can actually, we can specify rules. So we can you can specify overrides for any of the rules. And that includes, bit clearer, hopefully. So you can specify different thresholds. If by default it's medium, but you can specify different thresholds. And there are various options on GraphQL and SOAP and lots more on the Spider. So basically, we're kind of giving you access to all of the configuration that you'd be able to do via ZAP. So if you're used to the ZAP desktop, then anything you do in there, you can do here as well. There are a few things we've left out, mostly due to the GUI. And again, once we get to active scanning down here, we've got a lot more control. We've got duration of the scan, and then again, we can actually specify the strength and thresholds for every single rule. So as you can see, you've got a lot more configuration options than you have for the existing package scans, if you're aware of those. So what I'll do now is have a look at the baseline scan. So I've got this isn't quite the minimal one, but I will run that. And all I've done is, as per the slide, we're pointing at example.com. We're not really attacking it, so that's okay. Because we're just running the Spider, the passive scan, and with the reporting, I've specified a report directory and the report file as well, just to keep things clean. And we'll see now, because I've got progress to stud out, we'll see that the Spider has started, it found 4 URLs, and it finished. And it generated this report. So it's actually in the current working directory. So there is the HTML report, which isn't particularly useful. And I should have actually started I think, let's have a look. And there is the report. And you can see the time it's generated. So that is the report that's just been generated. So what I'll do now is I've also got an active scan one. So this time I'm not going to point at example.com because I'm actually going to do some attacking. So I'm going to point it at Bodget, which I've got running locally. And so what I'm doing this time is putting some passive scan configuration, and just for the hell of it, I'm changing the threshold of one of the rules. Then got the Spider, and with the active scan, because active scan takes quite a long time, I've got an example here where I'm setting the default threshold to everything to be off, and then I'm just going to turn on reflected cross-site scripting, and I've actually got some more options in the report as well. So I will run the active scan script. Again, for some reason on Mac, ZAP takes a little bit longer to start up than on other platforms. I think it's the way Java runs. And there we can first see the Spider found 129 URLs. And the passive scanning is finished, and we're turning the default threshold to off. And of course, it had to launch the. So it did actually launch the report in another browser, just to be awkward. So I will just open it here, and we will see that we have found one cross-site scripting vulnerability. Because that's the only active scan rule we ran. So that basically shows you how straightforward it is to control the active scan, the automation framework. And if you want any more details, then we've got zaproxy.org. under documentation, automate. And then we have those details I listed before, including, so if you want details of the API and daemon mode, all of that stuff is in. We've got lots of information there, but the automation framework we have listed here, and here is the full list of jobs that are currently supported. And these actually link to the help, I think. So if you want to see what the spider looks like, the automation job, then you can actually go and see all of the details there. So that is where we are with the automation framework. And as you can see, there's quite a lot more. We got a lot further than we had when I presented this in ZapCon. So do we have any questions about the automation framework?
So please, if you have a question, put it in the chat or in the Q&A. If you're live on Zoom, if you're in the YouTube chat, no questions so far, but we get hi Zap from Tokyo. So Simon, with
Hi. Okay, well, I'll press on, and if anyone's got any questions, then please just shout. So let's talk about reporting. So we know ZAP reports have not been great. To be honest, the core functionality hasn't really changed since the days of Paris Proxy. And there were 3 additional reporting add-ons on the marketplace, but as of recently, none of them were actively maintained. There is now a 4th add-on, and this one will be actively maintained. And the idea is this is what we're going to maintain going forward as a ZAP core team, and it will replace the core functionality and all of those other add-ons. As soon as it exceeds their capabilities, we're going to remove them from the marketplace. So a little bit about this one. It is already much more flexible than any of the existing ones. It supports HTML, Markdown, JSON, XML, PDF, and it supports external resources like images and JavaScript files. It uses an open source templating language called Timeleaf. And let me tell you, so the original ZAP reporting used XSLT. Timeleaf is so much easier than XSLT. I'm not a fan of XSLT. Timeleaf is a lot better. It is completely internationalized already, so we've got internationalized support, and the reports are ready to be localized. And it can access much more data from ZAP. We've just added that kind of capability, and we've got some examples of what can be done, but we know there's a lot more people want to add. So this is something we want feedback from you as a community of what you would like us to include or to be able to include in ZAP reports. So this is something where it does have a UI, so a demo is really in order. So I will bring up ZAP 210, and I do need something to look at. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to attack poor Bodget again. And I'm not going to let the full scan complete, but I just want to get the active scan working and going through. So it's all very standard, and I'll just let it run for a bit so that we actually have some active scan results available. If you're not aware, if you haven't seen this dialog before, we actually get a nice little response chart here, so we can see how many responses a second we're getting, which rules are running, all these fun things. And you can actually see what type of responses, whether they're 100s, 200s, 300s, 400s, 500s, all that kind of thing. So this is quite a useful little thing if you want to keep an eye on what's going on. So I'll just let it carry on until it's done the cross-site scripting one, because at least we'll then know we should have some vulnerability and see whether none of these have found any alerts yet. But any second now. There we go. So I'll close that and I will stop the active scan. So the new reporting add-on adds this little button to the toolbar, we also have a generate report option there on the reporting dialog. But if I click on here, what you'll see is you get this dialog. And we have now, you'll see we've got a whole set of different options here. So we have a scope, and basically you'll see that it's picked up the contexts. I've only got one and the sites. So I'll select that site. And then we've got an option of different templates. So I'll show you those. Then we can filter out things based on things like risk and confidences. And we've got some options particularly about where the templates are and the name, the pattern which will be used for the name here. But I'll generate that report, and it has, of course, come up on the other browser as well. So I'll just move that over here. And you'll see that this is the report. And you'll notice that I've got some text in there, which I added. And we're showing things, and actually we're including false positives here. So this is the report, and it looks very similar to the previous one. We wanted to kind of make sure that these things looked kind of, we still supported the old ones for people who kind of rely on those. But we do have various other options, and one thing you'll see, well, first of all, I'll show you the traditional PDF report. And again, it's going to look very surprisingly very similar to the previous one. So this is, it is actually generated from HTML, but it then appears as a PDF. And one thing you might have noticed is we have these options for sections. So say we actually only want, we don't want the alert details, we just want the count and instance count, then we can just choose those and we don't get any details. So what we want to do is make sure that the reports are much more flexible than before and provide what you want. And one thing we do have is, so we've got things like Markdown, XML, but more interesting one here is a kind of traditional report with requests and responses, and you'll see that's got more sections here. So if I generate that one, you'll see we actually have a chart. So this is including a third-party JavaScript library to generate that chart. And one of the other things it actually has the parsing scan rules. This is a feature we've been asked for many times, and you'll see that it actually shows you the active scan rules, and these are the active scan rules that ran. So these are the ones that ran, and you'll see the ones that didn't run aren't being reported, and then the passive scan rules. So all of these will have been invoked because they're always invoked when they're proxying anything through ZAP. So you can see essentially these are the passive scan rules that are passed, and these are the active scan rules that are passed. So that is the demo, what I was going to show you for the reporting side.
Maybe Simon, I think at this stage we have question of Jan Klaasens, who's joining us through Zoom, and which is related to the reporting part here.
Great.
Just what you've shown. His question is there a way to see how much each of the different ZAP scans covers the OWASP web security testing framework? Is there some kind of matching with the other OWASP project here?
We don't have anything like that, no. So I mean, we have been asked about that, and the trouble is we're a relatively small team, and there are a lot of different frameworks. You know, there's obviously there's the OWASP Top 10, and there are different OWASP frameworks. Now, I do know that there was a student who did some mapping for one of the other projects, and we would like to extend ZAP so we can actually refer to things like the OWASP Top 10 and some of the other OWASP projects as well. But we don't have that mapping at the moment, no. If anyone would like to contribute that, then we'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, I think that might be very useful addition. And then while we're at it, there's a couple of questions on YouTube live chat as well.
Cool.
A question from Jean Denis. So is there, so if the application would be implementing a web single sign-on, would you need to test that without authentication, or how does that work?
Okay, so authentication is a pain. It is always a pain for all security tools. My recommendation is to minimize your authentication if you possibly can. So, you know, this is particularly obviously not testing a live environment, which we don't tend to recommend anyway. We really recommend testing in a safe environment, whether it's a staging or QA environment. And if you can turn authentication off or go to something simple like a simple form, or if you've got an authentication token, those kind of things are ideal. Now, ZAP can cope with pretty much any authentication mechanism out there, but it's not necessarily going to be very nice. I actually do have, let me switch to, if you have a look at, find my mouse, the ZAP ZA proxy.org videos, then we actually have, I did an all-day DevOps ZAP Automation workshop, and this covers automation and authentication. And I think actually, as part of the deep dive series, I've covered that as well. So we've kind of done authentication and packaged scanning authentication. So I have actually demonstrated things like we can support single sign-on. So I've actually got, sorry, I'm just, oh, thank you. Well, it's just delivering something to me. And so what we have is, I've done some demos where we're actually testing Juice Shop with Google single sign-on. And that works by launching a browser and clicking on things. So we can do that, but generally, the more authentication you have to handle, the harder it is and the more fragile it is. So try and minimize authentication for your own benefit.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, and then while we're at it, and you're covering this sets a series of videos. A question from Bruno also on the live chat: Is there any integration with CI servers like TeamCity, Jenkins, others? Do you have a pointer there?
Right. So if I just go to them, the main one we have is GitHub Actions. So if you go to the GitHub Action Marketplace, and I think you're just searching for OWASP should be enough, you'll see, yeah, we've got the ZAP baseline scan and the ZAP full scan. So, which I think I mentioned before, those are the ones that we have, we've got the integration ourselves. We did have a Jenkins plugin that's no longer maintained, I'm afraid. So we don't tend to maintain the kind of integrations with CI, but the Docker scans are particularly, the Docker images are particularly easy to build in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. All right. Okay. Thank you very much. I think so far with questions. So.
Okay, great. So one thing I was going to go on to now is, I was just going to show, have a look at a fragment of one of the HTML reports. So what you'll see is we have these kind of, and this is all from Timeleaf, this kind of stuff. So where you'll see this kind of text report.alerts.summary.risk level, that is internationalized. So the risk level number of alerts, we're not actually using that text, we're using the internationalized text. And you'll see that Timeleaf has these controls like these. We have a loop there where we're going through a sequence of numbers, and we can actually call helper methods like the helper, or methods like helper.getRiskString, and we can call things like, we can get access to objects like alert counts. So this shows that if you want to create a report, then it's actually quite straightforward. The main thing is actually getting the HTML and any JavaScript you want working. And after that, it's very much a case of using the, integrating the kind of some of these time leaf controls, and we've got examples of all of those. So that's one thing I want to talk about is the ZAP Reporting Competition. Basically, we know we're not that great at creating ZAP reports, so we would like your help. So we have a prize of $100 for each HTML or PDF template that we include with ZAP. And the PDF ones are created via HTML. So there you can't, I think the HTML has to be well formed, so it has to have closing tags. So you could probably, just creating an HTML one isn't necessarily the same as creating a PDF one, but it's not far off. We're kind of aiming to accept around 10, but if there are a few more which are really great, then we're very happy to see that. We are looking for different styles, definitely not the, we don't want people reproducing the ZAP ones, the traditional ones. We want things that look much better than that, but they must be practical. And we've got a ZAP blog about that. So if I go back to find the right browser maybe, then we have a ZAP blog here. And one of the things is the reporting competition. So this gives full details, and so this actually says about some of the things which weren't available when we started the competition. Allowing arbitrary data to be included. We now allow that, and we're showing that by showing the active and passive scan rules that have passed rather than failed. Support for custom fields, haven't added that in, but that won't take long. Support report sections, that is in. So that's when, as you saw from here, basically reports can define what sections they have available. So all of this information is defined by the report, and it's a very simple YAML file which defines these things. So you can say which sections, and it's quite easy to actually include the to define to make sure that the mapping that we handle all of the infrastructure. You just have to put some standard controls in to tell whether the alert count is there or not, has been selected. And we can help with all those things. So the time leaf stuff, if you're not familiar with that, don't worry about it. I mean, the one thing is time leaf is actually very well documented. I found it very easy to get started. As I said, much easier than XSLT. But if you have problems with that, then just get in touch with us and we'll be able to help you out. So that is the blog, and we are accepting submissions now. And I went a bit too far then. So that is kind of what I was planning on going through. Are there any more questions, anything about the reporting or anything else ZAP related really?
Yeah, there's already one. So, but before I ask it, I also invite people that are now watching live to indeed add your questions. Now's the time. As long as we have questions, you will stay online, and then if it will be a shorter call. We do have a question in the live chat. Any plans to also publish the Docker image to AWS ECR, so Elastic Container Registry, since Docker have started adding restrictions, so making it harder to use the image in CI/CD?
Yeah, we've that is a possibility. We'll look into that. The last time I looked, one of the problems, I couldn't see any way of finding out how many downloads there have been from AWS, and that annoys me. So one thing we've been it's very difficult to get statistics for open source projects, and one of the key ones we get is downloads. So we record the number of direct downloads we get for the ZAP binaries, and we get a lot of data from the Docker pull requests. As far as I'm aware, that's not available in AWS. If anyone knows different, then please let me know. That's not a breaking thing. If enough people ask for this, then we will do it. But up until now, we've kind of resisted actually maintaining ZAP in many places where we don't get any sort of feedback because that's, you know, we don't get very much, and we need it. That's my position at the moment.
Right. So I'm looking around, and I'm not seeing any. I have one question, and I definitely also want to thank you for making your time available for us. Is that you're running one of the most, I would say, successful projects within OWASP. What would be your advice for any starting or any existing OWASP project leads to make his or her project more successful in the way you're doing it?
So yeah, it's something I've thought about. I think there is, in some cases, there's a lot of luck involved. You know, it's actually being at the right place at the right time. So, you know, you do need to have a project that people want to use, and people want to get involved in. You know, it doesn't matter how, you know, if you've got something really obscure that not many people are interested in, it's really hard to get any contributions. So, you know, it's got to be something that people really want to use. The other thing is it takes a lot of effort and a lot of time. So you do need to keep plugging away. But you do need to make sure that you try and make it clear that you're actually very welcoming to new contributors. I never say that ZAP is my project. It belongs to everybody who's contributed to ZAP, and I was very clear from the early stages that I wanted people to contribute. And I think as a team, we spend quite a lot of time trying to help people to contribute. So someone will get in touch, we'll suggest something, and we'll probably spend more time helping them to do something than it would have taken us to do it in the first place. Which, you know, sounds a bit counterintuitive, but we know that if we don't help people, then people won't stick around and do things, actually start doing things a bit more quickly. So I think it's a bit of luck. It's a bit of a keep plugging away. And I think, you know, if you're thinking of starting a project, any open source project, not just an OWASP one, I do think it's a great thing to do, but be aware that for it to be successful, you really need to stick around for the long term. If you just want to contribute something and then go away, I think you'd be better off contributing to an existing project. To make a project successful long term, you've got to keep plugging away. You know, we've been working on ZAP for over 10 years now. We've seen a lot of web security tools come and go in that time, and we'll probably see a lot more. But we're the ones who stick around and just keep on going. So you've got to have a certain amount of sheer bloody mindedness, really, I think.
Definitely true. Well, I don't see any other questions popping up. What I would definitely suggest, if you're looking at this afterwards and you were too late, is that indeed join or contact Simon directly. You can also join the OWASP Slack channel from ZAP. There's a dedicated ZAP channel there. And with that, I would really like to thank Simon very much again. I do have a latest pitch, so let me also share my screen.
Let me stop sharing just to let you in.
Okay, there we go. So with that, we do have on this YouTube channel, we'll always publish the video. So if you like this video, obviously like it. If you want to get noticed of these kind of videos, subscribe to it. We do have a meetup group, LinkedIn groups, Twitter. I would say take your social media poison or any channel that you look at to be informed of any of our next upcoming events. We'll have Jeremiah Grossman next month in May, so make sure to join us there on Thursday. And with that, I would like to thank you very much for viewing this and see you next time. Bye-bye.